The air in the premium cabin of the Celestine's Fortune was a curated masterpiece of indifference. It smelled of synthesized lavender and recycled oxygen, of whispered transactions and the quiet isolation of beings who believed paying more meant feeling less. The liner drifted through the Tarquin corridor, a silver needle threading the velvet dark, carrying its cargo of 312 souls toward destinations that mattered only to themselves. In seat 19C, Colton Reeves tried to make himself small. It was a difficult task for a man built like he was, broad shoulders forged by years of manual labor in zero-G, hands scarred by salvage torches and hull breaches. His armor, the standard issue of the Galactic Armada's Salvage Corps, was a history book written in scratches and carbon scoring. The brownish-orange plates told tales of 100 derelict ships, 1,000 patched leaks, and one particularly memorable incident involving a Groxian trash compactor he still saw in his dreams. He'd polished it for this journey, but some stains, like some memories, sink too deep to ever truly fade. His hair, the color of sun-bleached wheat, was messy in a way that spoke of more important concerns than appearance. A thin, pale scar traced a path from his temple to his jawline, a souvenir from the Battle of Meridia's Fold, though he never called it that. He called it that Tuesday, because Tuesdays, in his experience, had a particular talent for disaster. But the true center of his universe, the gravity that held every fractured piece of him together, was asleep against his chest. Penny, 6 years old, with hair a shade brighter than his own, worn smooth from his anxious stroking. She was tucked into the crook of his arm, her small form swallowed by denim overalls and a gray long-sleeve shirt, its fabric soft from countless washes. On the pocket, a single, clumsily stitched star patch glimmered under the cabin lights. Her mother had sewn it there, one quiet evening a lifetime ago. Penny had refused to wear anything else since. Her breathing hitched, a soft, broken rhythm that carved a fresh wound in Colton's heart with every irregular gasp. Even in sleep, the enemy within her did not rest. Her small fingers, pale and perfect, were clenched in the fur of Mr. Hopsworth, a stuffed rabbit so threadbare its origins were a mystery. It was her anchor. It was his. The seat beside them was a study in contrast, a different galaxy entirely. Thessaly Vaughn did not simply occupy space, she curated it. She sat with the unconscious grace of someone whose posture had been disciplined by finishing schools on 3 separate worlds. Her hair was a waterfall of obsidian, falling in a perfect, silken curtain past shoulders held with regal stillness. Her face was elegant, sharply beautiful, but undeniably alien, the high cheekbones traced with delicate, scale-like patterns that shimmered with a subtle, emerald bioluminescence. Her eyes, the most arresting feature, were a luminous, intelligent green, like sunlight filtered through a forest canopy. They currently scanned a data tablet, absorbing legislative amendments with an expression of mild, academic distaste. A Valanthy, one of the elder species, who had mapped the spiral arms when humanity was still discovering fire. Her people were known for 3 things: ethereal beauty, formidable intellect, and a cultural certainty of their own superiority that was as vast and cold as the space between galaxies. Her title, Deputy Minister of Interspecies Commerce for the Valanthy hegemony, meant she was a professional arbiter of worth, a judge of value, and she had already passed her silent judgment on the man and child in 19C. Penny shifted, a tremor running through her slight frame. A small, pained whimper escaped her lips, the sound of a bird with a broken wing. Thessaly's perfect nose wrinkled. She did not look up from her tablet. Must the child vocalize her distress so publicly? Her voice was a melody of polished consonants and glacial vowels, capable of frosting glass. Some of us are attempting to review the Centauri Trade Accords. They require concentration. Colton's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering beneath the scar. 8 years in the Armada had taught him tactical silence. 2 years as a single father had taught him the cost of unnecessary battles. He focused on the heat of Penny's forehead against his neck, on the too rapid flutter of her pulse. He counted her breaths, a silent prayer with every exhale. Thessaly, mistaking his silence for submission, or perhaps simply ignoring it, continued. "I must confess a certain curiosity," she said, her luminous eyes finally lifting to sweep over his salvager's armor with dismissive efficiency. "The premium cabin is typically reserved for beings engaged in consequential transit. Diplomats, executives, individuals of substance." She let the word hang, its implication settling over him like dust. "How does one in your particular line of work secure such passage?" The question was a scalpel, precise and cold. Colton kept his gaze on Penny's face. "The ticket was expensive," he said, his voice low, roughened by disuse and fatigue. "But it was the fastest route to Hyia Station." Hyia, a flicker in those green eyes, a spark of recognition quickly banked by disdain. "The medical colony. How provincial. I understand they perform adequate procedures for your species." The phrase, "your species," was delivered with the weight of millennia. "My daughter needs surgery." The words were stones dropped into a still pond. "There's a specialist there." How profoundly touching. She returned to her tablet, the glow casting her alien features in sharp relief. A father's devotion. Though one might assume a more frugal transport would suffice. Economy, I'm told, offers identical life support. Fewer amenities, of course, but such things are largely decorative. She gestured a slender hand, its fingers tipped with faint, opalescent scales, at the cabin's subdued luxury. Penny whimpered again, a sound that twisted in Colton's gut. The fever was rising. The neural cascade that was stealing his daughter from him, synapse by precious synapse, did not care about cabin classes or diplomatic titles. It was a thief in the night, relentless and impersonal. The dam within him, strained by months of fear, by the sail of his ship, by the crushing weight of a future narrowing to a single, desperate point, cracked. "I sold my ship," he heard himself say, the whisper meant for Penny's hair, but carrying in the quiet cabin. "The Miranda K. 12 years I flew her. Through asteroid belts, salvage runs, dark zones, she was a good ship. More home than anything with a foundation." He swallowed. The memory of her empty docking berth a physical ache. The surgery. It's not covered. Not by standard med plan. The specialist on Hyia, Drive. Aris. She's the only one who's had success with Brennan's syndrome. The change in the atmosphere was subtle, but Colton, attuned to the minute shifts in pressure and hum that signaled shipboard disaster, felt it. Thessaly's finger, which had been scrolling her screen, stilled. Her luminous eyes lifted again, but the disdain had been displaced by something else. Surprise, and beneath it, a flicker of something that looked uncomfortably like recognition. Brennan's syndrome, she repeated. Her cultured voice softened, just a fraction, the edges blurring. A degenerative neuromotor condition, primarily affecting human children under the age of 8. It is exceedingly rare. She paused, and for the first time, her gaze truly settled on Penny, not as an inconvenience, but as a small, suffering entity. And, as I understand, quite devastating. She opened her mouth again, perhaps to shape a word that was not a critique, perhaps to offer a fragment of the empathy that thrived, hidden, even in the most polished of cultures. But the universe, with its impeccable sense of timing, intervened. The Celestine's fortune gave a violent, shuddering lurch, as if a giant hand had slapped its hull. The serene lavender lighting died, plunging the cabin into a darkness broken only by the sickly orange pulse of emergency strips along the floor. A chorus of gasps and a single, truncated scream echoed in the sudden gloom. The artificial gravity fluctuated, a nauseating roller coaster drop that sent data tablets and complimentary drinks tumbling. Colton's body reacted before his mind could engage. His arms tightened around Penny, his feet bracing against the deck, his spine aligning with the ship's new, wrong axis. That wasn't turbulence, his salvage-honed instincts screamed. That was a primary thruster failure. A hard, uncontrolled venting of plasma. This is not a minor anomaly, Thessaly breathed, her diplomatic composure evaporating. The luminescent scales on her cheeks flared with anxious light, painting her fear in emerald hues. Her elegant hands gripped her armrests, knuckles pale. Port lateral thruster is gone, Colton said, his voice calm amidst the rising panic around them. He was already moving, securing Penny into her safety harness with swift, practiced motions. The harness clicks were loud in the dark. Navigation's trying to compensate, overcorrecting. It's chasing its own tail. She stared at him, her green eyes wide. How could you possibly know that? The intercom above them crackled with a sound like grinding stones, the natural voice of Captain Hyia, a Garrelian. Now, however, it was fractured by panic. At 10 Tion Pass S. Sengers. This is the captain. We have experienced a gargling sound, a critical systems failure. If there is anyone on board with any flight experience, any experience at all, please make yourself known to the crew. Immediately. We have a situation. A moment later, the cockpit door hissed open, and Captain Hyia himself filled the doorway to the premium cabin. He was a massive, olive-green scaled Garrelian, his broad, amphibian face usually a picture of stoic competence. Now, his large, amber eyes cycled through shades of alarm, his throat sac pulsing. His moss-colored flight suit seemed to hang on him. His panicked gaze swept the cabin. "Is there anyone?" he boomed, voice cracking with a stress his species was not physiologically built to display. "Any military pilots? Any Galactic Cruiser pilots? This is not a drill. We are losing navigational control." His wild, desperate eyes scanned the terrified faces, the cowering Krillix merchant, the human family clutching each other, the elderly Valanthy couple holding hands, and landed, like a lifeline thrown into a storm, on Colton Reeves. On the familiar, scarred armor of the Salvage Corps. "You." The captain pointed a trembling, clawed finger. "Salvage Corps. Mandatory flight certification for deep space salvage. Do you have it? Do you still have your certification?" Every eye in the cabin turned to him. The weight of their hope, their terror, was a physical pressure. Colton looked down. Penny's eyes were half open, glazed with pain and confusion. Her small hand found his, her grip surprisingly strong. He looked at Thessaly Vaughn. The superior, polished diplomat was gone. In her seat was a woman, an alien, her luminescent scales dim with fear, her elegant hands clenched in her lap. She met his gaze, and in her wide green eyes, he saw the crumbling of 6,000 years of certainty. He looked back at the captain, at the faces of strangers whose lives had inexplicably become entwined with his. "Galactic Cruiser class certified," Colton said, his voice cutting through the static-filled silence. He unclipped his harness and stood, his salvage armor suddenly not a mark of low status, but a uniform. Mantis 7 interceptors, Thunderhead heavy fighters, Leviathan-class carrier docking protocols. 8 years active duty. "What's your situation, Captain?" Captain Hsk made a sound that was half sob, half rasp of relief. "Cascade failure in the navigation matrix. Port thrusters are dead. We are in a decaying orbit toward the gravity well of Valanthy Prime. 23 minutes until we pass the pull point. My co-pilot is unconscious. Stress-induced cardiac event. The autopilot is attempting to dock us with an asteroid it has misidentified as Station GAMMA9. Colton nodded, a strange calm settling over him. This was a language he understood. Broken systems. Impossible odds. The tightening noose of time. "That's quite a Tuesday," he said, almost to himself. "It's Thursday." The captain wailed. "Bad things happen to me on Thursdays, too." Colton turned to Thessaly. All the polished barbs, the casual cruelty, hung in the air between them. He could have said anything. Instead, he simply looked at her, and then at the child in the harness beside her. "Watch my daughter," he said. It was not a request from an inferior. It was not a command from a hero. It was the raw, unvarnished trust of a father hurtling toward an abyss, handing his heart to the only pair of hands available. Thessaly Vaughn, Deputy Minister of Interspecies Commerce, heir to a culture of detached intellectualism, blinked. The last remnants of her hauteur dissolved. She looked at Penny's small, fevered face, at the threadbare rabbit clutched to her chest, and something ancient and maternal, a thing that transcended species and status, stirred within her. "I will," she said, and her voice was not polished, but soft, and utterly sincere. "I promise you." A single nod. Then Colton Reeves was moving, following the hulking Garrelian captain toward the cockpit at a run, leaving behind a cabin full of breathless hope, and one alien diplomat gently stroking the hair of a sleeping human child. Blank, blank. The cockpit was a symphony of disaster. Warning lights strobed a frantic red and amber across every console. The main view screen showed a star field that was slowly, sickeningly rotating. The ship was tumbling, its spin only partially masked by the groaning gravity compensators. In the co-pilot's chair, a young Aurelian woman with lavender skin was slumped, her chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. "Talk to me," Colton said, sliding into the auxiliary station, his hands already flying across the controls. The layout was different, commercial, not military, but the language of crisis was universal. "The nav matrix is hallucinating," Hyia yelled over the blaring alarms. "It received a corrupted data packet, maybe from a buoy, maybe from our own updates. It thinks we're somewhere we're not, and it's trying to correct for phantom spatial drift. Every correction fires a thruster we don't need, which confuses it more. So the ship is blind, drunk, and convinced the wall is the door," Colton summarized, his mind racing. Salvage had taught him this. You didn't fight a mad computer. You lied to it. Can we isolate the matrix from thruster control? Integrated system. Commercial grade. They're wired together. Then we don't isolate. We convince. Colton's fingers danced, pulling up diagnostic screens, accessing low-level command prompts. "It thinks that asteroid is a station. So we tell it the station is on fire. What? We feed it a fake distress signal from the asteroid. A docking emergency, a containment breach, something that triggers its automated hold and assess protocol. That should freeze its correctional overrides, give us a window to manually control the thrusters." Captain Hyia's amber eyes bulged. "That is either brilliant or suicidal. In my line of work, Captain, the two are often the same." Colton was already crafting the false signal, weaving a tale of reactor leaks and failing docking clamps. He remembered his old flight instructor, a grizzled veteran with one cybernetic eye. "Reeves, when you're in a hole with a broken shovel, sometimes you gotta convince the dirt it wants to be somewhere else." The computer hesitated. Alarms stuttered. Then, with an almost audible sigh of digital relief, it accepted the new, catastrophic narrative. The ship's violent jerking smoothed into a gentle, holding drift. "By the ancestors, it's working," Hyia whispered. "Don't thank it yet. We're still falling into a gravity well. We need those port thrusters back. Manual restart sequence. Where's your engineering access?" The next 19 minutes became a blur of desperate improvisation. Colton narrated an ever more elaborate saga of disaster on the fake station, inventing ion storms and comms failures to explain the erratic sensor data, while simultaneously talking Captain Hyia through the arcane, physical process of rebooting a frozen thruster assembly from a secondary panel. His world narrowed to streams of code, system diagrams, and the constant, gut-churning pull of Valanthy Prime's gravity. Sweat beaded on his forehead, tracing the line of his scar. He thought of Penny, back in the cabin. He thought of Sarah, on Thessalian Prime, smiling at him from a sun-drenched courtyard a lifetime ago. "You've got hands that can fix anything, Colton Reeves," she'd said, kissing his scarred knuckles. "Even broken things. I've got primary plasma ignition." Hyia roared. "Port thrusters are live. Now kill it," Colton said, his voice hoarse. "Cut all computer assistance to navigation. Everything. I want this ship flying on pure manual, like a crate with engines." "You want to fly a Celestine-class liner by hand. It's not built for that. The control lag alone. I've flown bigger with less." Colton's hands gripped the manual control yoke, feeling the ship's immense, reluctant weight through the hydraulics. Over the moons of Katos. 3 Mantis 7s against a hegemony dreadnought. My nav comp took a hit in the first 30 seconds. He closed his eyes for a second, the memory a flash of fire and static. I flew the rest by the stars, by the feel of her shudder, and by the prayers of the 2 wingmen I couldn't save. You learn, Captain. You learn that when the machines fail, all you have is what's in here. He tapped his temple, and in here. He clenched his fist on the yoke. Captain Hyia looked from the human's intent, scarred face to the spinning star field, to the flashing proximity alerts for the gravity well. He made a sound deep in his chest, a Garelian sign of acceptance. Then, with a decisive, savage chop of his clawed hand, he severed the primary navigation links. A profound silence fell over the cockpit. The frantic alarm chorus died. The screens went dark, then rebooted to show only raw, unfiltered sensor data. The Celestine's fortune was now a 300,000-ton projectile, and Colton Reeves was its sole guidance system. He flew. He flew not with the crisp, digital precision of a modern pilot, but with the instinctual, visceral touch of a salvage jockey who had nudged multi-billion credit wrecks through debris fields with millimeters to spare. He felt the groaning protest of the hull through the yoke, listened to the shriek of overtaxed inertial dampeners, read the gravity wells pull in the aching strain of his own muscles. He adjusted, not with calculated bursts, but with gentle, constant pressure, coaxing the massive liner away from the abyss like a man leading a terrified beast back from a cliff edge. He flew for the elderly Valanthy couple holding hands. He flew for the crying human children. He flew for the Krillix merchant praying to its watery gods. He flew for Captain Hyia, who had trusted him. He flew for the unconscious Aurelian co-pilot, whose life was now in his hands. And he flew for the little girl in seat 19C, whose favorite shirt had a star on the pocket, and whose future was measured in the trembling seconds it took to pull a ship from the grasp of a planet. Time lost meaning. There was only the vector, the strain, the stars slowly, agonizingly, ceasing their dizzying spin. 12 minutes later, with a jolt that rattled every bolt in the frame, the Celestine's fortune settled onto the docking clamps of Emergency Station GAMMA-9. The landing was rough, a controlled crash that would require weeks of repairs, but it was a landing. The hull hissed as it equalized pressure with the station. In the sudden, deafening quiet, Colton slowly uncurled his fingers from the yoke. They were locked in a claw, trembling with exhaustion. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the first he felt he'd taken in an hour. He stood on legs that felt like water and walked back into the premium cabin. The scene that greeted him was not the one he had left. The panic was gone, replaced by a stunned, tearful relief. Passengers were embracing, weeping, offering shaky thanks to indifferent corporate deities. And in the aisle, standing like a statue of jade and rose quartz, was Thessaly Vaughn. She was holding Penny, not standing guard over her. Holding her. The little girl was awake, her head resting on the alien woman's shoulder, one small hand playing with the shimmering fabric of Thessaly's diplomatic suit. Mr. Hopsworth was tucked securely between them. She woke up during the descent, Thessaly said, her voice barely a whisper. The cultured, disdainful tone was utterly absent. She was frightened. I told her that her father was making everything safe. That he was the bravest man I had ever witnessed. She swallowed, the scales on her throat pulsing softly. I believe they were the first entirely true words I have spoken in many, many years. Colton reached out, and Penny flowed into his arms, a warm, breathing bundle of trust. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling the scent of child shampoo and fever, and felt a sob build in his own chest, a release of terror he had not allowed himself to feel. "Daddy," Penny murmured into his neck. "The pretty green lady said you fly spaceships like the heroes in Mommy's stories." "I used to, Bug," he whispered, his voice thick. "You still do," Thessaly said. Her luminous eyes were bright, glistening with a moisture that was unmistakably tears. "Mr. Reeves, Colton, I owe you an apology. A galaxy of apologies. I judged you by your armor, by your circumstances, and I found you wanting. I wielded my culture's age as a weapon against your humanity's youth. I was contemptible." She took a step closer, ignoring the other passengers, her world narrowed to this man and this child. "And when the moment demanded everything, you gave it. Without hesitation. Without a thought for my earlier cruelty. You simply acted. You saved us all. It's what I was trained to do," he said, but the rote response felt hollow even to him. "No." She shook her head, the obsidian hair swaying. "Training teaches mechanics. What you did, that came from here." She placed a slender, scaled hand over her own heart. "I have spent a lifetime among calculators and strategists, beings for whom every action is a move in a game. I mistook that cold calculus for strength, for sophistication." Her voice broke, just a little. "I have never been more wrong in my long life." Around them, gratitude washed over Colton in a wave. Handshakes, shoulder clasps, a harmonic hum from the Krillix merchant that the translator badge on Colton's armor interpreted as, "My spawn children will sing of your water path." Captain Hsk announced he was filing an official commendation with the Armada to have Colton's full flight status, and more, reinstated. But Colton's focus was on the Valanthy diplomat standing before him, her polished armor of arrogance shattered, revealing something raw and real and profoundly beautiful underneath. "My mother," Thessaly said suddenly, the words rushing out as if they'd been damned for centuries. "She died of a neurodegenerative condition when I was very young. Not unlike Brennan's. Our science, for all its advances, could not save her. I remember the fear, the helplessness, the hollow pity in the eyes of our peers." She looked at Penny, sleeping again in Colton's arms, and her expression softened into an ache of shared understanding. "I became a diplomat to build walls against that helplessness. To accumulate power so nothing could ever hurt me like that again. All I succeeded in doing was isolating myself from everything that matters." Penny stirred, her eyes fluttering open. With the unerring instinct of a child, she reached out a small hand and touched Thessaly's cheek, her fingers tracing the glowing scale pattern. "Your eyes are pretty," Penny said, her voice sleepy and earnest. "They look like leaves with sunshine through them." The sound that escaped Thessaly Vaughn was not a polished laugh. It was a burst of genuine, startled joy, bright and clear. "Thank you, little one," she said, her own hand coming up to cover Penny's. "That is perhaps the most meaningful compliment I have ever received." The station intercom buzzed. Repairs to the Celestine's fortune would take 73 hours. Arranging alternate transport to Hyia Station would require a minimum of 2 days. Colton's heart, which had been soaring, plummeted. 2 days. Dr. Aris had been explicit. The neural pathways were degrading. The window for the procedure was precise. 2 days could mean the difference between a full life and a limited one. Between hope and managed decline. He must have made a sound, because Thessaly's eyes snapped to his, reading his despair instantly. "There is a Valanthy hegemony diplomatic courier," she said, her voice low and decisive. "At Dock 19. It was to take me to a tariff summit on Centauri 7. She waved a hand, dismissing an entire sector's economy. "I find I have lost my appetite for trade disputes." She stood to her full height, and the commanding presence returned, but it was different now. It was not fueled by superiority, but by purpose. By compassion. "It is fast. Hyia Station is 16 hours away at its cruising speed. And," she added, a faint, new smile touching her lips, "I am not without influence with the medical administration there. A call from the deputy minister, or even a former deputy minister, can sometimes expedite matters." Colton could only stare. "You're offering us passage on a hegemony courier." "I am offering to begin repaying a debt," she corrected gently. "In Valanthy culture, a life debt is sacred. You have given me, and everyone here, our lives back. I am offering you a faster path to saving hers." She looked at Penny. "And I would very much like to see how this story ends." "Will she be okay, Daddy?" Penny asked, her brow furrowed with the weight of adult worries. Thessaly knelt again, heedless of her. exquisite suit on the scuffed station floor. She was now at eye level with the little girl. "Your father," she said solemnly, "is a man who moves starships with his will in his hands. He faced down the gravity of my homeworld for you. For all of us. I believe, with every fiber of my being, that he will help make you okay." She glanced up at Colton, seeking permission. He nodded, wordless. "Would you like to see a diplomatic starship, Penny? It has a viewing lounge where the stars do not streak, but stretch, like silver thread." Penny's eyes went as round as moons. "Really? Really?" And, Thessaly leaned in conspiratorially, "If your father says yes, I will tell you the story of how the Valanthy first learned to slip between the stars. It involves a very annoyed astronomer, a telescope he kicked in frustration, and a vat of fermented Trillian fruit juice that really should have been kept sealed." Penny giggled, a sound so pure it seemed to cleanse the lingering fear from the air. "Daddy, please." Colton looked from his daughter's hopeful face to the alien woman kneeling before her. He saw the walls, not just of culture and status, but of grief and self-protection, lying in rubble. He saw a bridge, fragile and new, being built in their place. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We can. Blank, underscore, blank." The Diplomat's grace was a sliver of obsidian and starlight, a vessel where form and function met in perfect, intimidating harmony. Its interior was serenity itself. Warm, indirect lighting, surfaces that seemed to drink in sound, and a faint, pleasant scent of ozone and something like sandalwood. Thessaly was true to her word. The ship's medical officer, a senior Valanthy physician with copper-colored scales, examined Penny thoroughly in a med bay better equipped than most planetary hospitals. "The Brennan's progression is advanced," he told Colton, his tone respectful, "but her core vitality is strong. The surgery on Hyia is her best chance. The urgency is real, but she is not fragile. She has a fighter's spirit. She gets that from her mother," Colton said. Thessaly, standing in the doorway, heard the past tense. She said nothing until later, when Penny was asleep in a softly lit guest cabin, Mr. Hopsworth tucked under her arm. She found Colton in the main viewing lounge, staring at the hypnotic stream of stretched starlight. "Penny's mother," she began gently, settling into the seat beside him. "Sarah." The name was a prayer and a wound. She was on Tessarian Prime. 4 years ago. I was Armada then, leading a civilian evacuation when the rebel bombardment started. She was a teacher. She got her students to the bunkers. All of them. He closed his eyes, the memory a flash of fire on a view screen, a static-filled comm channel going forever silent. The bunker's outer shield failed. Just one. The one she was in. She died saving children, Thessaly said softly. It was not a question. She died because I was too far away to do anything about it. The old guilt, acid sharp, rose in his throat. No. Thessaly's voice was firm. She turned to face him, her green eyes capturing his. You carry her love, Colton. You carry her strength. You are raising her daughter with a devotion that honors her memory every single day. You do not have to be in the same place to be part of the same fight. She paused. My mother. Her illness was slow. It stole her mind long before her body failed. I was young, and all I could do was watch. I thought if I became powerful enough, I could stop bad things from happening. It was an illusion. All we can ever do is face them with someone we love beside us. She reached out, her cool, scaled fingers tentatively covering his work-roughened hand. The contrast was startling, the jewel-like perfection of her skin against his scars. Colton, among my people, the repayment of a life debt is a profound journey. The debtor must offer something of equal value. I have been trying to calculate the value of 312 lives. Of my own life, which I had spent so poorly. She took a breath, her luminescent scales pulsing softly. The calculation is infinite, so the only possible repayment is everything. All that I have, all that I am. He turned his hand so theirs were palm to palm. Thessaly, I am not proposing a human marital contract this very second, she said, a flicker of her old dryness returning, tempered by nervousness. I am saying that I wish to know you. I wish to be part of Penny's story. I wish to help, in any way you will allow. The surgery, the recovery, the life that comes after. Her green eyes searched his, vulnerable and brave. If you will have me there. Colton looked at their joined hands, the salvage pilot and the star diplomat. He thought of Sarah, of her laugh, of her unwavering belief that the universe was fundamentally kind, even when it was cruel. Don't build a fortress around your heart, Colt, she'd told him once. Build a porch, with room for visitors. I want you there, he said. But my life, it's a salvage job. It's broken parts and empty accounts and a future I can't see past next week. Then we will salvage it, she said, and her smile was like a new star igniting. Together. I am excellent at logistics, resource allocation, and verbally eviscerating bureaucrats who stand in the way of good things. Are those useful skills? A laugh burst from him, genuine and surprised, the first in what felt like an eon. I'd say they're damn essential. In the doorway, unseen, Penny watched them, her sleepy eyes content. She hugged Mr. Hopsworth close and tiptoed back to bed. Blank, blank. The surgery at Hyia Medical Colony took 8 hours. Colton paced the sterile waiting room until he wore a path in the floor. Thessaly did not pace. She waged a quiet, relentless war on the comm system. Colton caught phrases. Personal oversight by the minister. Diplomatic consequences for inadequate care. Yes, I am threatening to re-evaluate your system's preferred trade status. Why do you ask? When she hung up, she looked serene. The head of neurosurgery, 2 of his top fellows, and a specialist from Valanthy Prime are now observing the procedure via real-time holographic relay. As a gesture of interspecies collaboration, funded by a grant I just established. You didn't have to do that. I know. She sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his. That is what makes it a gift, and not a transaction. When the surgeon emerged, Aris herself, a human woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, Her first words were, "She's going to be just fine." The strength left Colton's legs. Thessaly caught him, her alien strength easily supporting his weight as a wave of relief, so profound it was indistinguishable from collapse, washed over him. The neural grafts took perfectly. Drive. Aris continued. Full synaptic reintegration. She'll need therapy. About 6 weeks of it, but she'll recover 100%. That girl of yours. She kept asking us if we could make the scar look like a star. Colton wept then. Great, shuddering sobs he didn't try to stop. Thessaly held him, her cool cheek against his temple, her own luminescent tears leaving faint, glowing tracks on his skin. Blank, underscore, blank. The months that followed were a gentle, healing tide. Thessaly, true to her word, stayed. She resigned her formal post, too many walls in that office, she said simply, and took a role as an independent interstellar mediator, which required only a secure comm link. She rented an apartment near the rehabilitation center and transformed it into a home with a baffling efficiency, blending human comfort with Valanthy elegance. She learned to cook human food with disastrous, then passable, then actually good results. The pasta incident was forever memorialized with a framed, carbonized fusilli on the wall. She learned all of Penny's favorite stories, and told Valanthy folktales in return, her voice weaving pictures of crystal forests and singing stars. And Colton learned her. He learned that her scales warmed when she was happy, glowing like embers. He learned that she hummed in her sleep, a soft, melodic vibration. He learned that her seeming arrogance was often a shield for a deep, empathetic heart that felt the pains of the world too acutely. He learned to love the contrast of her cool skin against his, the way she fit perfectly under his arm, the way she looked at Penny as if she were the most fascinating, precious being in the cosmos. One evening, watching Penny, now healthy, vibrant, her laughter echoing like bells, chase holographic butterflies in the station's biodome, Thessaly said softly, "I never imagined this. Any of it. A man who sees the person behind the title. A child who wants to paint her fingernails to match my scales." She leaned her head on Colton's shoulder. She asked if she could call me Mom yesterday. Not Thessaly Mom, or anything. Just Mom. I explained she had a mother who loved her very much. She said, "I know. But my heart has room for two." Her voice hitched. I did not know a heart could hold so much. She's right. You know, Colton said, his arm tightening around her. About the room. Colton, she said, turning to face him. The biodome's artificial sunlight caught the scales on her cheeks, making them shine. Among my people, when two decide to join lives, there is a ceremony under the light of our home star. I know humans have rings, vows, cakes. I have been studying them extensively. But I wondered, she, the master orator, fumbled. I wondered if we might make something new. A ceremony that is ours. That honors where we came from, and what we've built. Colton's breath caught. Thessaly. You. I believe I am asking you to marry me, Colton Reeves. If the concept is acceptable. I understand human custom often expects the male to. He kissed her. It was an answer, a promise, a beginning. When they parted, her eyes were stars, her scales alight. That, she breathed, is a yes. From behind a nearby fern, a triumphant squeal erupted. Penny launched herself at them, a whirlwind of joy. Yes. Daddy said yes. I get to be the flower girl. And have a new mom. And there's cake. The pretty green lady promised. Thessaly laughed, catching her. A diplomat, she said, her eyes meeting Colton's over their daughter's head, always honors her agreements. Blank, underscore, blank. The wedding was held under a calibrated star lamp in the biodome, a blend of two worlds. Colton wore a simple, dark suit. Thessaly wore a gown of iridescent silk that shifted from rose to emerald with every movement, and a delicate headpiece of crystal shaped like leaves. Penny, between them, wore a dress with pockets for Mr. Hopsworth and a garland of intertwined Terran daisies and Valanthy star blossoms in her hair. They exchanged vows in 3 languages: Galactic Common, Valanthy, and the simple, honest words of the heart. The rings were bands of asteroid iron Colton had salvaged himself, forged with a sliver of polished Valanthy crystal. Captain Hist gave away the bride, a honor that left him puffing with pride. The elderly Valanth couple from the liner stood as Penny's honorary grandparents. The Krillix merchant emitted a harmony of perpetual blessing. And there was cake. The 7th attempt, perfectly risen. To my husband, Thessaly said, raising a glass to the assembled guests, friends, survivors, and a few bewildered but delighted former colleagues. Who taught me that the most vital negotiations are not over resources, but over the spaces in our hearts. And to my daughter, she looked at Penny, who negotiated the surrender of my defenses with a single smile. Later, on the observation deck of their new home, a sleek, gifted vessel designated a diplomatic liaison ship, but optimized for deep space salvage and exploration, they watched the stars. Penny slept inside, Mr. Hopsworth and a piece of cake beside her. Where shall we go? Thessaly murmured, her head against his chest. Anywhere, Colton said, kissing her hair. Everywhere. The whole galaxy, Tess. With you and Penny, it's all home. A diplomatic answer. I learned from the best. She smiled, her scales glowing softly in the starlight. My former life. It seems like a story about another person. A lonely, polished story. This one's better, he said. Infinitely. From the cabin doorway, a sleepy voice asked, Daddy. Mom. Are we going on adventures now? Colton and Thessaly looked at each other, then at the infinite dark sprinkled with light. Ahead lay derelict ships to salvage, stars to map, worlds to see. Behind them lay a commercial liner, a shared crisis, and the moment a diplomat's mockery turned to awe, and a salvage pilot's despair turned to hope. Yes, sweetheart, they said together. We're going on adventures now. And as the ship, which Penny had insisted on naming Hopsworth's dream, powered up its drives, a small, brass plaque was being installed on the Celestine's Fortune, in premium cabin, seat 19C. Captain Aegis had commissioned it. It read, "Here sat courage, dressed in humble armor. Here slept hope, in the form of a child." When the void asked, "Is there a pilot on board?" a father answered, "May all who journey remember. Heroes need no title, kindness needs no passport, and love is the only gravity that truly matters."